I've always been a skeptic, until one rainy autumn day that changed everything. I still remember the oppressive gray sky and the relentless drumming of rain against my apartment windows. I had planned to spend the afternoon curled up with a book, but an inexplicable feeling urged me to step outside for a walk. What followed remains one of the most unnerving experiences of my life. It began innocently enough. I left my building just after lunch, the kind of day where even the bright neon of a closed shop felt dim and faded beneath the gloom. The neighborhood was deserted, and the usually familiar streets took on a ghostly quality. I walked along the slick sidewalks, my umbrella a feeble barrier against the downpour, and tried to shake off the persistent prickle of unease that crawled up my spine. As I turned a corner near an old rundown grocery store, I noticed something odd. A figure standing under the awning of a shuttered shop. At first, I assumed it was just another passerby caught in the storm. But as I drew closer, I realized that something was off. The person stood completely still, almost too still, as if frozen in time. And when I passed, I couldn't help but glance back. The figure's silhouette seemed to dissolve into the shadow, leaving only a lingering impression of an unnatural stillness. I couldn't tell if I was imagining things, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I hurried along, my mind racing with thoughts of what I'd seen. My pulse quickened, and I began to consider the possibility that I wasn't alone in my own neighborhood. Every distant sound, the creak of a sign swinging in the wind, the rustle of leaves in a near-empty park, suddenly took on an ominous significance. I reached a small abandoned playground, and there, the sensation of dread deepened. The swings moved ever so slightly, propelled by the wind, yet no one was there to set them in motion. I paused, my breath catching in my throat, as the sound of water dripping echoed unnervingly around me. The further I walked, the more the rain seemed to amplify every small, unsettling detail. I passed by a row of parked cars, their windows dark and reflective, and for a fleeting moment, I could swear one of them showed a flicker of movement in its mirror-like surface. I chided myself for letting my imagination run wild, but the gnawing certainty that something was terribly amiss wouldn't let go. My instinct screamed that I was being drawn into something far beyond a simple walk in the rain. Then, as I approached, a narrow side street lined with old brick buildings, I heard it. A low, deliberate tapping, as if someone were knocking. The sound was too measured to be the random patter of rain. I paused in my tracks, heart pounding, and strained to listen. The tap, tap, tap echoed from a darkened doorway of an apartment building. I hesitated, caught between curiosity and an instinctive need to flee. With every step toward the sound, my skin prickled with foreboding. I finally reached the doorway, its peeling paint and dim light barely hinting at what might lie inside. There was no sign of movement, no visible life in the murk. I felt the urge to retreat, yet something compelled me to inch forward. Suddenly, as I lifted my hand to push the door open, it creaked on its own, as if beckoning me inside. I froze, my heart thundering in my chest, before reluctantly stepping through the threshold. Inside, the stale smell of damp wood and decay overwhelmed me. The narrow hallway was poorly lit, shadows pooling in the corners, and every creak of the floorboards underfoot seemed amplified in the oppressive silence. The tapping sound was now unmistakable, coming from somewhere further down the corridor. I followed it, each step dragging me deeper into the unknown, until I reached a small, neglected room. The door was ajar, and through the gap, I saw the faintest outline of what looked like a handprint on a dusty mirror. At that moment, the room plunged into darkness as the rain's thunderous assault on the building's old windows drowned out every other sound. In the pitch-black silence, the tap, tap, tap resumed. Closer now, relentless. I backed away, nearly tripping over my own feet. In a blind panic, I raced back through the hallway and out into the rain-soaked street. I didn't stop until I was back at my apartment door, drenched and trembling. Now, whenever it rains, I'm reminded of that day. The mundane world took on an inexplicable, sinister aura that I can't shake. I've never discovered who, or what, was behind those inexplicable disturbances. Perhaps it was a trick of the light, an overactive imagination fueled by the gloom. But sometimes, in the stillness of the night, when the rain begins its relentless drum, I swear I can hear that soft, rhythmic tapping, echoing from somewhere beyond the veil of ordinary life.